"Don't touch her," the judge thundered as the gavel cracked. Too late. She staggered, blood on her lip, eyes lifting to the bench as realization hit. Brother. If you felt your chest tighten just now, stay with this story. Some truths deserve witnesses, and some silences deserve to be broken. If you're still here after seeing her stand alone while the room stayed silent, then you already understand why stories like this must be told. Stay with us. Subscribe, like and comment where you're watching from, not out of habit, but because some voices only survive when someone chooses to listen. The courtroom smelled like varnish and old paper, authority preserved in layers. Light from the tall windows cut across the benches in pale stripes, illuminating faces trained to watch without intervening. It was a room designed for verdicts, not mercy. For Sable Nkiru Valine, it felt like a room built to forget her. She stood at the center aisle with her shoulders drawn back, posture learned early: never fold, never invite permission to doubt you. A faint bruise shadowed her cheekbone, softened beneath careful makeup applied with shaking fingers that morning. Her wrist throbbed under the sleeve of her blouse, wrapped tight enough to hold the swelling, loose enough not to invite questions. Sable kept her gaze forward. She did not look toward the gallery, where whispers slithered like smoke. She did not look at Rydian Crow, the man she once loved, seated 2 rows behind her in a tailored suit that cost more than her monthly rent. She did not look at the woman beside him, Maelys Hartrow, whose crossed legs and sharp smile broadcasted ownership. Sable breathed. In. Out. In. Out. Survival, she had learned, was posture before it was courage. The murmurs rose anyway, soft judgments disguised as curiosity. Eyes skimmed her skin, her hair, her stillness. The unspoken question pressed against her back. What did she do to bring this on herself? Rydian leaned toward Maelys and whispered something. Maelys laughed under her breath, red nails grazing his sleeve. Sable heard the sound and felt it land, small, precise, meant to sting. She did not react. Her attorney, Avira Solis, sat beside her, calm and coiled. Avira's pen rested against her notepad, unmoving. She didn't offer platitudes. She offered presence. It was enough. Across the aisle, the bailiff called for order. The room shifted, people straightened, phones disappeared, gossip paused. A signal rippled through the benches. The judge was entering. Sable lifted her eyes. And the world tilted. The man beneath the robe was older than the brother in her memories. Broader shoulders, lines etched deeper by years of restraint, but recognition struck with a force that stole her breath. Owen Cale Valine. Her brother. Her voice didn't make it past her lips. The name lived there, trembling, half-formed. Owen's gaze found hers instantly, as if pulled by gravity. For a heartbeat, just one, his expression fractured. Shock. Pain. Something like apology. Then the mask slid into place. "Please be seated," he said, voice even, practiced. Sable's knees threatened to give. She gripped the edge of the table and sat, pulse roaring in her ears. Her brother was the judge. The man she hadn't told. The man she hadn't protected from this. 2 rows back, Rydian stiffened. He leaned closer to Maelys, eyes narrowing as recognition dawned. "That's her brother," someone whispered. Maelys's smile thinned. "Interesting," she murmured. Owen settled behind the bench, gavel aligned, posture immaculate. To the room, he was impartiality incarnate. To Sable, he was the boy who had walked her to school and the man who had once said, "If anything ever happens, you call me." She hadn't called. The clerk announced the case. Names echoed against the walls, formal and cold. Sable listened as if from a distance, aware of the way her hands shook only when she let herself notice. Owen scanned the docket. He did not look at her again. He couldn't. He anchored himself to procedure, the only thing sturdy enough to hold him upright. He had opened the file earlier that morning. He had nearly dropped it. Plaintiff, Sable Nkiru Valine. The memory burned. The pages he hadn't let himself study too closely. The clinical language that tried, and failed, to flatten harm into bullet points. He believed in the law. He had built his life on its promise. But belief did not prepare you for this, for your sister standing alone while power leaned toward her. Owen lifted his eyes to the courtroom. His voice carried. "We will proceed." Avira rose, measured and clear. She outlined the claim with restraint, refusing spectacle. Sable listened, heart hammering, as her story took shape in neutral phrases. She watched Rydian's face, polished, attentive, almost bored. He met Avira's words with a faint smile, the kind meant to signal confidence. Maelys crossed her legs, satisfied. When Avira sat, Rydian stood. He smoothed his jacket, glanced once toward the bench, then turned to the room. "Your Honor," he said, warm and reasonable, "this is a misunderstanding magnified by emotion." Sable felt the old pressure rise, the familiar attempt to shrink her truth until it fit his comfort. Owen's gaze did not waver. "Proceed with relevance." Rydian inclined his head, respectful on the surface. "Of course." He began to speak about timelines and context, about stress and provocation, about how people react differently under pressure. He did not say her name. He didn't need to. The implication hung there, heavy and practiced. Sable's chest tightened. She focused on the grain of the wood in front of her, the way Avira's pen finally moved. The courtroom listened. And for the first time since she had walked in, Sable felt something shift, not safety, not yet, but balance. The presence of Owen behind the bench changed the temperature of the room. The rules felt closer. The floor steadier. Rydian sensed it too. His cadence adjusted, just slightly. Maelys's foot stilled. Owen called for the next motion. His voice did not soften. It sharpened. Sable swallowed. Justice, she realized, was not a promise. It was a process, and today, it had finally turned its face toward her. If you're still here, ask yourself this: how many people stand where Sable stands without a room that ever changes? If this moment matters to you, don't leave it alone. Some stories don't need cheering, they need witnesses. If you're still watching, it's because this one reached you. Stay with it. Silence has never been neutral. The first strike did not come as violence. It came as permission. "Plaintiff," the clerk called, "please approach the stand." Sable Nkiru Valine rose carefully, as if her body no longer fully trusted the world beneath it. The courtroom felt narrower now, air thick and expectant. Each step toward the witness stand sent a quiet ache through her ribs, a reminder of hands that had once claimed love and later chose force. She did not look at Rydian Crow. She did not look at Maelys Hartrow. She kept her eyes forward, spine straight, the way she had learned to do when the truth cost too much. Behind the bench, Owen Cale Valine watched in stillness that bordered on unnatural. He noticed everything: the faint hesitation in her stride, the way her left wrist stayed close to her body, the tension at her jaw as she swore to tell the truth. Every instinct in him screamed. But instinct was not allowed here. "Ms. Valine," Rydian said as he stood, voice smooth as polished stone, "you claim you were assaulted inside this courthouse before today's hearing. Is that correct?" "Yes," Sable answered. Her voice was steady. It had taken years to learn how to do that. Rydian nodded sympathetically. "And yet there is no video footage. No neutral witnesses willing to testify. Just your account." A murmur rippled through the gallery. Sable inhaled. There were witnesses. Friends. Rydian asked gently. "Family." The pause was brief, but deadly. Rydian smiled, just enough. Or people who later decided they didn't want to be associated with volatility? Avira Salas was on her feet instantly. "Objection." "Sustained," Owen said, sharper than before. "Rephrase." Rydian dipped his head. "Of course." He turned back to Sable, stepping closer, too close. "Isn't it true," he said quietly, "that during our marriage, you had a habit of reacting emotionally during disagreements?" Sable felt the familiar tightening in her chest. "I reacted to abuse," she said. Rydian chuckled softly. "That's your interpretation." From the gallery, Maelys shifted, eyes glittering. "You see," Rydian continued, "stress can distort perception. Infidelity, arguments, jealousy, these things can escalate emotions." Maelys leaned forward and whispered, "She's lying." Sable flinched. Owen's hand curled around the edge of the bench. "Ms. Hartrow," he warned, "you will remain silent." Maelys stood anyway. "I was there," she said brightly. "She attacked me." The courtroom gasped. Sable's head snapped up. "That's not true." Maelys's voice sharpened. "She grabbed me. Threatened me." Rydian only intervened to protect me. Chaos ignited. Order. Owen's gavel cracked, but the room had already tilted. Rydian moved fast. Too fast. He stepped toward Sable as if to restrain her, but his hand closed around her wrist with brutal familiarity. Fingers dug into flesh already tender, pressure exact, deliberate. Pain shot up her arm. "Let go," Sable whispered, panic flooding her chest. "Please." Melee surged forward, nails slicing across Sable's forearm. "You don't get to destroy us." Time fractured. "Enough." Owen shouted, rising to his feet. But the damage had landed. Sable stumbled backward, heel catching the edge of the stand. Her head struck the wood with a hollow crack. She hit the floor hard, breath leaving her lungs in a sharp, helpless sound. Blood bloomed at the corner of her mouth. Someone screamed. Bailiff Knox Alder rushed forward, wrenching Rydian away as Melis fought and shrieked. Restraints snapped shut. Gasps echoed. Phones were yanked from hands. Rydian went pale. Melis went silent. Owen was already moving. He descended from the bench without thinking, crossing the space between them in seconds. He knelt beside Sable, the world narrowing to her labored breathing, the trembling of her hands. "Sable," he said, voice stripped bare. "Look at me. Stay with me." Her vision blurred. She focused on his face, older, harder, terrified. "Owen," she breathed. "I didn't know it was you. I swear." "I know," he said fiercely. "I know." Tears slid sideways into her hair, unashamed now. The courtroom watched as the truth they had doubted lay bleeding at their feet. "Get medical assistance," Owen ordered, voice cutting through the noise. "Now." As officers cuffed Rydian, whispers spread. "That's her brother." The judge. Rydian stared at Owen, horror finally breaking through entitlement. Owen rose slowly and turned back to the bench, to the people who had watched and waited for her to fail. "This court is in recess," he said. "Effective immediately." The gavel struck. Hard. The hallway smelled of antiseptic and shame. Sable sat on a bench, ice pressed to her cheek, blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Her body shook now that she no longer had to pretend. Owen stood a few feet away, hands clenched, breath unsteady. "I should have known," he said quietly. "I should have seen it." "You couldn't," Sable replied. "I didn't tell you." "Why?" She looked down. "Because every time I tried, no one listened." Silence stretched between them, heavy, shared. Owen knelt in front of her. "You are not alone anymore," he said. "Not ever again." Her composure finally shattered. He didn't wipe her tears. He let them fall. Because this was not about fixing. It was about believing. If watching truth finally break through violence shook you, don't look away now. Some stories demand witnesses. When a voice is almost silenced and still survives, it deserves people who stay. If you're still here, you're already part of that choice. Don't leave now. The hospital room hummed with a low mechanical patience, machines doing their jobs without judgment. White walls. Pale curtains. The smell of disinfectant sharp enough to sting the eyes. Sable lay propped against stiff pillows, her arm bandaged, cheek swollen beneath a thin layer of gauze. Every part of her body ached, but the deeper pain lived somewhere harder to reach. It pulsed behind her ribs, heavy and unrelenting. She stared at the ceiling. Across the room, Owen stood with his back to her, hands braced against the window ledge as if the glass were the only thing keeping him upright. Outside, the city moved on, cars passing, people laughing, a world indifferent to what had just happened. Neither of them spoke. Because once words entered the room, there would be no taking them back. "I should leave," Sable finally said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the hum. Owen turned slowly. "You're not going anywhere." She shook her head. "I don't mean tonight. I mean all of this." Her eyes flicked away. "I never wanted you dragged into it." Dragged. The word landed like an accusation. "You didn't drag me," Owen said, too quickly. "This isn't about me." Sable let out a bitter breath. "Everything is about you now. They'll say you're biased. They already are." He didn't deny it. News alerts had been lighting up his phone since the moment the court recessed. conflict of interest, judicial misconduct, emotional compromise. He hadn't opened a single one. The case will be reassigned, Owen said. That's procedure. And Ridian? Sable asked. Owen's jaw tightened. He'll be charged for what happened in court. That much is unavoidable. But the rest? Her fingers curled into the blanket. The years before that. Silence answered her. Sable laughed softly, humorless, hollow. That's what I thought. Owen stepped closer. I want to help you. You can't, she said immediately. Not the way you think. He stopped. You think I want you to save me, she continued, voice trembling despite her effort. I don't. I just don't want you to lose everything because of me. Owen stared at her, disbelief flashing across his face. Lose everything? Yes, she said. Your career. Your reputation. The life you built so carefully. She finally met his eyes. You didn't sign up to be my shield. I signed up to be your brother. The words hung between them. Sable looked away, tears threatening again. That's exactly why you can't be. 2 floors below, Ridian Crow sat in a holding room, hands cuffed, suit rumpled for the first time in years. His confidence had not vanished, but it had shifted, coiling inward, calculating. This is temporary, he told his attorney, voice low. They'll calm down. The attorney didn't respond immediately. That silence unsettled him more than anger would have. You assaulted her in open court, the attorney finally said. In front of a judge. In front of cameras. Ridian leaned back, jaw tightening. She provoked it. The attorney closed his folder. That defense won't hold. Ridian's eyes hardened. It always has. Across the room, Maylis Hartrow paced like a caged animal, heels clicking sharply against the floor. Her composure had cracked in the courtroom. She hadn't expected that. She hadn't expected consequences. This is her fault, Maylis hissed. She planned this. Ridian didn't answer. For the first time, doubt crept in, not about what he'd done, but about how much control he truly had left. Back in the hospital room, the doctor had come and gone. Instructions were given. Follow-ups scheduled. Life reduced to manageable steps. Still, Sable didn't feel grounded. Avira Solis stood near the door, coat draped over her arm. I'll give you some space, she said gently. But we need to talk soon. About next steps. Sable nodded, grateful. When the door closed, the room felt smaller. I'm scared, Sable admitted, the words tearing loose before she could stop them. Not of him. Of what comes after. Owen sat down slowly. You don't have to decide anything tonight. But everyone else will, she said. They'll decide who I am. Again. Owen leaned forward. Then we make them wrong. She shook her head. That's the thing. I don't want to fight anymore. Her voice broke. I just want peace. Owen closed his eyes. He had spent his life believing that justice was the path to peace. But looking at her now, exhausted, fractured, he wondered if the system he served could ever truly give her what she needed. I can step back, he said quietly. Recuse myself publicly. Make it clear I won't influence anything. Sable studied him. Would that protect you? It would protect the process. That's not what I asked. He didn't answer. Sable sighed. See? Even now, I come second. The words stung because they weren't cruel, they were honest. Owen stood abruptly. I need air. He left before she could stop him. In the hallway, Owen pressed his forehead against the cool wall, breathing hard. Judges were trained to compartmentalize. To separate personal truth from public duty. But Sable wasn't a case file. She was his sister. And for the first time in his career, Owen didn't know how to hold both truths without breaking something essential. Have you ever pulled away from someone, not because you didn't care, but because caring felt too dangerous? Sit with that feeling. This story isn't finished asking hard questions. Some moments don't need applause, they need patience. If you're still here, it's because you're willing to sit in the discomfort. Stay. This story hasn't earned abandonment. The safe house wasn't what Sable expected. She had imagined something stark: steel doors, white walls, the cold anonymity of protection that felt more like punishment. Instead, the place smelled faintly of cedar and citrus cleaner. Soft lamps cast a honeyed glow across the living room. There were plants on the windowsill, real ones, green and stubborn. Temporary, Avira Solis said, setting her briefcase down. Until things cool off. Nothing cools off, Sable replied. Avira didn't argue. She rarely did when Sable was right. The decision hadn't been dramatic. No sirens. No shouting. Just a quiet knock at the hospital room door and a careful explanation. Ridian had resources. Maylis had connections. And threats, subtle, deniable, had already begun to surface. For Sable's safety, distance was necessary. Distance had always been the answer. Except this time, distance came with an asterisk. You'll have security, Avira continued. Discreet. And, she hesitated, choosing her words. Owen insisted you not be alone. Sable's jaw tightened. I didn't ask for that. I know, Avira said gently. But he did. Owen arrived after midnight. Sable heard the door before she saw him, the soft click of the lock, the careful step inside, as if he were entering a space already crowded with ghosts. She sat curled at the end of the couch, blanket around her shoulders, the television on mute. He stopped when he saw her. For a moment, neither moved. I'll sleep on the floor, he said finally. Or the car. There's a spare room, she replied, eyes still on the screen. Another silence. Thicker than the last. Owen set his coat down, movements restrained, controlled. He looked out of place here, too formal, too contained, like a man who had forgotten how to exist without structure. I won't interfere, he said. I'm here to make sure you're safe. That's all. Sable let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. You always say that. He glanced at her. And you always assume I mean something else. Their eyes met, years of distance compressed into a single look. The television flickered, soundless. Outside, the city hummed. Forced proximity didn't arrive with a warning. It settled in slowly, in the shared kitchen, where they reached for the same mug and stopped short. In the hallway, where footsteps overlapped, then hesitated. In the small domestic moments that refused to stay neutral. At 2 a.m, Sable couldn't sleep. The couch cushions felt wrong beneath her back, too soft, too yielding. She padded into the kitchen, drawn by restlessness more than hunger. Owen was already there. He stood at the counter, sleeves rolled up, hands braced against the stone as if grounding himself. A glass of water sat untouched beside him. You're awake, she said. So are you. She crossed her arms. This is awkward. A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. That's one word for it. She poured herself water, hands steady now. You don't have to hover. I'm not hovering. She raised an eyebrow. He sighed. I'm trying. The honesty in his voice surprised her. They stood there, shoulder to shoulder but not touching, the space between them charged with things they hadn't said. You should hate me, Owen said quietly. Sable frowned. For what? For not noticing. For not asking harder questions. For being proud of a system that failed you. She stared into her glass. I don't hate you. Why not? Because I know what it costs to be strong all the time, she said. And I know what it costs to stop. The words landed softly, but they stayed. A sound outside made Sable flinch, a car door slamming somewhere down the street. Her body reacted before her mind could catch up. Owen moved instantly. Not toward the door, toward her. He didn't touch her. He didn't speak. He simply stood close enough that she could feel his presence, solid, deliberate. It's okay, he said. You're here. Her breath came shallow. She nodded, embarrassed by the tremor she couldn't control. I hate this, she whispered. Needing anyone. Owen's voice softened. Needing doesn't make you weak. Pretending you don't, that's what breaks people. She looked at him then, really looked. At the lines worry had etched into his face. At the restraint that had always been mistaken for distance. You don't let anyone need you, she said. A beat. Someone has to hold the line, he replied. And who holds you? The question hung there, unanswered. The days blurred. They learned each other's rhythms again, cautiously, like people approaching a memory they weren't sure they were allowed to keep. Morning coffee in silence. Shared meals with conversation that stayed safely shallow. News updates they both avoided. But the unspoken pressed in. One afternoon, a package arrived, unmarked, left at the door. Sable froze, heart racing. Owen inspected it carefully before opening it. Inside, a single folded sheet of paper. No words. Just a line drawn down the middle, clean, deliberate. A message without language. "They want you scared," Owen said. Sable swallowed. "It's working." He met her eyes. "Then we don't give them what they want." That night, thunder rolled outside, sudden, violent. The lights flickered. Sable jolted awake, breath hitching. Before she could stop herself, she called out, "Owen." He was at her door in seconds. "I'm here." She sat up, ashamed of the fear pooling in her chest. "I'm sorry." "Don't," he said. "Not for this." She nodded, tears threatening again. He hesitated, then sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to crowd her. "We'll get through this," he said. "Together." Together. The word settled between them, not a promise, not yet, but an acknowledgement. For the first time since the courtroom, Sable believed him. When circumstances force closeness, what truths rise to the surface? Sit with that question. This story is asking you to. If you're still here, it's because you understand that healing doesn't happen alone. Stay with this story, not because it's easy, but because walking away is how people stay broken. The rain came quietly that night. Not the dramatic kind, no thunder, no warning, but a steady, persistent tapping against the windows that sounded like memory trying to get in. Sable sat cross-legged on the floor of the spare room, a cardboard box open in front of her. Avira had dropped it off earlier with a brief explanation. "Some of your things from storage," she'd said. "I thought you might want them." Sable hadn't been sure. But now, with the house asleep and the city muted by rain, curiosity outweighed caution. Inside the box were fragments of a life she had carefully sealed away: notebooks, old photos, a cracked compact mirror, letters she never sent. Each item carried weight, not because of what it was, but because of what it remembered. She picked up a photograph. 2 siblings on a cracked concrete stoop. A teenage Owen, lean and serious even then, arms slung protectively around his little sister. And Sable, bright-eyed, smiling without fear, before the world taught her to measure joy. Her chest tightened. She hadn't meant to drift this far back. The next item stopped her breath completely. A small leather journal. Her handwriting stared back at her, slanted, precise, younger. She hadn't opened this in years. The first page read, "If I write it down, maybe it won't live in my body anymore." Sable closed her eyes. She didn't hear Owen enter the room. Only felt the shift in the air, the quiet way he always announced himself. "I didn't mean to intrude," he said gently. She nodded, holding the journal like a confession. "I forgot this existed." He knelt across from her, careful, respectful. "You don't have to show me." "I know." Her voice wavered. "But I think I should." She opened the journal again. The words were raw, unfiltered, written by a woman still learning the difference between love and endurance. Rydian said I provoked him. Rydian said it was stress. Rydian said no one would believe me. Owen's breath caught. Page after page revealed a pattern. Small things first. Isolation disguised as concern. Control disguised as protection. Anger softened with apologies. And then, escalation. "I never told anyone," Sable said. "Not you. Not Mom. I thought if I just tried harder, it would stop." Owen stared at the page, knuckles whitening. "How long?" She swallowed. "Years." The word landed like a blow. "I didn't leave because I was weak," she continued. "I left because one day, I saw myself in the mirror and didn't recognize who I was becoming." Owen's voice was hoarse. "Why didn't you come to me?" She looked up, eyes shining. "Because you already carried so much. Because you were the good one. Because I didn't want to be another thing you had to fix." The room fell silent. Owen reached for the journal, then stopped himself. May I? She nodded. He turned another page, and froze. A different handwriting. Older. More recent. A note clipped inside. If anything happens to me, this isn't my fault. Owen exhaled shakily. Sable. There's more, she said. From beneath the journal, she pulled out a folded document, creased worn. A restraining order request. Unfiled. I wrote it after I left, she said. But then he promised he'd change. He always did. Owen closed his eyes. This wasn't just a story of violence. It was a story of conditioning. Of a woman trained to doubt her own survival instincts. Across town, in a sleek apartment untouched by warmth, Maylie stood at the mirror, scrubbing her hands as if something clung to her skin. You should have waited, she muttered to her reflection. Rydian's voice echoed in her memory, let me handle it. But she hadn't. Because fear had crept in the moment Sable fell. Fear that she wasn't special. Fear that she was replaceable. Maylie turned away from the mirror, heart pounding. She hadn't planned to become this woman. But she had chosen it. Back in the safe house, the past refused to stay quiet. Owen sat heavily on the floor, journal closed between them. I keep thinking, if I'd noticed something. Anything. You couldn't have, Sable said softly. He didn't bruise me where people could see. He learned. Owen looked at her, pain etched deep. And I didn't learn you were hurting. She reached out, hesitant, and placed her hand over his. The touch was brief but grounding. We survived different ways, she said. That doesn't make either of us wrong. Tears slipped free, quiet, unashamed. Owen didn't wipe them away. He said, you were never the problem. The words settled into her bones. Later that night, Sable lay awake, the journal on her chest. For the first time, the memories didn't feel like weapons. They felt like evidence. Outside, the rain eased. Inside, something shifted. The truth had been spoken. And once truth breathes air, it changes the shape of everything that follows. Morning arrived without ceremony. No sirens. No headlines. Just a thin stripe of sunlight slipping through the curtains and resting on the edge of the kitchen table like it had always belonged there. Sable woke to the smell of coffee. Not the burnt kind Rydian used to drink. This was softer, nutty, careful. Considerate. She padded into the kitchen in socks, hair loose around her shoulders, and found Owen standing at the stove, sleeves rolled, posture unguarded in a way she hadn't seen since they were young. You still take it with cinnamon, he said, not turning around. She blinked. How do you? You used to steal mine, he replied, a faint smile in his voice. Every morning. The memory landed gently. She took the mug he offered. Their fingers brushed, brief, electric. Neither commented. They sat at opposite ends of the table, the quiet between them no longer sharp. It felt shared. I slept, Sable said after a moment. All the way through. Owen nodded. That matters. She studied him over the rim of her mug. You didn't. He shrugged. Habit. They didn't talk about the night before. About the journal. About the things that couldn't be unlearned. Some truths needed time to settle before they could be handled again. Instead, they talked about small things. A neighborhood bakery Owen had discovered. The plant in the corner that needed more light. A movie Sable loved but pretended not to. It felt like building a bridge plank by plank, quiet, deliberate. Later, they walked. Not far. Just around the block, security a discreet shadow at a distance. The air smelled like rain-soaked concrete and possibility. Sable felt exposed at first, every passing car question, but Owen matched his pace to hers, never rushing. At a crosswalk, she stopped abruptly. A man laughed behind them. Loud. Sudden. Her body tensed. Owen didn't ask what was wrong. He simply shifted closer, close enough that she could feel his warmth without being crowded. It's okay, he said softly. I'm here. The words were not dramatic. That's why they worked. She exhaled. They reached a small park, a pocket of green tucked between buildings. A bench sat beneath a tree just beginning to bud. Sable sat. Owen hesitated, then joined her. I used to think healing meant forgetting, Sable said. Like one day you wake up and it's gone. Owen watched the leaves move overhead. What do you think now? I think it means remembering without pain, she said. Or at least, without shame. He nodded slowly. You never had anything to be ashamed of. She looked at him then. Really looked. You keep saying that, she said. Like you're trying to convince yourself. He met her gaze. Maybe I am. The honesty surprised them both. They sat there longer than planned. Sunlight shifted. The city breathed around them. For the first time since the courtroom, Sable laughed, quietly, unexpectedly, when a dog dragged its owner past the bench, determined and unapologetic. I used to be like that, she said, before I learned to ask permission. Owen smiled. You still are. Back at the safe house, the afternoon stretched open. They cooked together, awkward at first, then easier. Owen chopped vegetables with judicial precision. Sable teased him for it. He didn't deny it. Music played softly from Sable's phone, an old playlist she hadn't touched in years. Owen recognized the songs. He didn't comment. He didn't need to. At one point, Sable's hand shook as she reached for a glass. Owen noticed. He took the glass from her gently and filled it himself, setting it back within reach. No questions. No fixing. Just care. The realization hit her slowly, like warmth seeping into cold hands. This was what safety felt like. Not control. Not silence. Presence. Later, as dusk settled, Sable found herself sitting on the floor again, this time without the box, without the journal. Owen leaned against the couch, jacket off, guard lowered. You know, he said, when I became a judge, I thought the hardest part would be making decisions. She tilted her head. What was it? Admitting when the law isn't enough, he said. When people need more than a ruling. She considered that. And what do you need? The question was quiet. He didn't answer immediately. Forgiveness, he said finally. From you. Maybe from myself. She reached out and rested her hand over his, longer this time. You're already on your way, she said. Their eyes held. Something unspoken passed between them, not romantic, not yet, but intimate in a way that felt just as powerful. A knock interrupted them. Avira's voice came through the door. I'm sorry. We need to talk. The world edged back in. News. Timelines. Strategy. But something had changed. As Avira spoke, Sable realized she wasn't bracing anymore. She wasn't shrinking. She was anchored. Later that night, alone in her room, Sable stared at the ceiling and felt something unfamiliar settle into her chest. Hope. Not loud. Not reckless. But real. If you've ever felt what it's like to breathe again after holding it in for too long, stay with this moment. Some stories don't pull you in with noise. They earn you with quiet truth. If you're still here, it's because this one means something to you. Stay. Healing is unfolding. The news broke at dawn. Not with urgency, but with inevitability. Owen stood at the kitchen counter, phone in hand, watching the headline refresh as if it might change its mind. Judge accused of compromising case involving sister. He didn't read the article. He didn't need to. He already knew how it would be framed, how restraint would be mistaken for guilt, how proximity would be twisted into conspiracy. Behind him, Sable entered quietly, still wrapped in sleep and softness. She stopped when she saw his face. What is it? She asked. He handed her the phone. She read the headline once. Then again. Her stomach dropped. They're saying you influenced the case, she whispered. That you. That I protected you, Owen finished. Silence fell hard between them. Avira arrived less than an hour later, urgency etched into every line of her posture. She didn't sit. We need to move quickly, she said. This has teeth. Sable folded her arms, grounding herself. What does that mean? Avira glanced at Owen. It means the ethics committee wants a statement. Today. Owen nodded. I'll give them one. And, Avira continued carefully, it would help if you publicly distanced yourself from Sable. The words landed like glass. Sable looked up sharply. Distanced how? Avira hesitated. Physically. Temporarily. Publicly. The room seemed to tilt. No, Owen said immediately. It's not a suggestion, Avira replied. It's damage control. Sable's chest tightened. You want him to abandon me? No, Avira said. I want to protect him so he can still help you later. Owen turned to Sable. I won't leave. But Sable was already shaking her head. You have to, she said. Both of them froze. Sable. No, she repeated, firmer now. This is exactly how this keeps happening. People get close to me and lose everything. That's not true, Owen said. She laughed once, short, brittle. Isn't it? Avira's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, face tightening. They're running another piece. They're questioning your credibility now. Sable felt the floor disappear beneath her. They're saying I orchestrated this, she said hollowly. That I used you. Owen took a step toward her. That's a lie. But it's working, she snapped. The room went still. She hadn't raised her voice. That was what made it worse. I can't be the reason you lose your life's work, Sable said. I won't. Owen stared at her. You don't get to decide that for me. And you don't get to martyr yourself for me, she shot back. The air between them grew sharp, cutting. I didn't ask for this, she continued, words tumbling out now. I didn't ask to be hurt. I didn't ask to be seen. And I didn't ask for you to step into this and act like you can absorb the impact for both of us. Owen's voice dropped. I'm your brother. She flinched. That's the problem, she said quietly. You're always my brother. And I'm always the thing that needs protecting. The words struck deep. Owen's jaw tightened. You think I see you as fragile? I think you see me as something you failed, she said. And I won't carry that. The silence that followed was devastating. Avira looked between them, regret flickering. I'll wait outside, she said softly, and left. Owen took a breath that didn't steady him. You think I'm doing this out of guilt, he said. I think you're doing it because you don't know who you are if you're not holding the line, Sable replied. He stared at her, wounded. And who are you if I stop? She swallowed. Someone who survives on her own. The words were meant to protect them both. They still broke something. Owen stepped back. For the first time since the safe house, distance returned, not physical, but emotional. Vast. Cold. I'll give them the statement, he said, voice clipped. And I'll step away. Sable's chest constricted. That's not what I meant. It's what needs to happen, he said. For you. For you, she corrected. Their eyes held, pain mirrored, unresolved. Owen grabbed his coat. Sable, he said, pausing at the door. I would choose you again. She couldn't answer. The door closed softly behind him. The hours that followed blurred. Phones rang. Messages flooded in. Opinions sharpened like knives. Sable sat alone in the living room, knees drawn to her chest, the quiet roaring in her ears. The safety she'd felt, earned fragile, had vanished in an instant. She opened her laptop without thinking. Scrolled. Read. She manipulated him. She ruined him. She's playing the victim. Her hands trembled. She shut the screen and pressed her palms to her eyes. This was the moment. The one she always reached eventually, the point where hope felt like a mistake. Across town, Owen stood before a bank of microphones, face composed, voice steady. I am recusing myself from any matter related to this case, he said. Effective immediately. The words were necessary. They still felt like loss. As cameras flashed, Owen wondered if he had just done the one thing Sable feared most, proved that loving her came with consequences. That night, Sable lay awake in a room that no longer felt safe. She stared at the ceiling and whispered to the quiet, I tried. Tears slid silently into her hair. Have you ever pushed someone away, not because you didn't love them, but because you were afraid of what loving you might cost them? Stay with that feeling. Some moments hurt because they're honest. If you're still here, it's because you recognize this kind of pain. Don't leave now, this story hasn't finished earning its healing. Silence has a sound when it lasts long enough. For Sable, it sounded like the refrigerator's low hum, the tick of the wall clock she hadn't noticed until now, the echo of her own breath when the house slept and refused to comfort her. The safe house felt different without Owen, not emptier exactly, but unmoored. Like a place that had lost its north. She stood at the kitchen sink long after midnight, hands resting on cool porcelain, staring at her reflection. The bruise on her cheek had faded to yellow. The bandage on her wrist itched. The woman in the glass looked steadier than she felt. Someone who survives on her own. The words replayed, hers, not his. A shield she had raised because shields were familiar. Necessary. Heavy. Her phone vibrated once on the counter. A message from Avira Solace. The committee accepted his recusal. Media cycle will move on. For what it's worth, I think you both did what you thought was right. Sable set the phone down without replying. What was right felt abstract at 3 in the morning. She walked to the spare room and opened the box again, not the journal this time, but the photo beneath it. The stoop. The boy and the girl. She traced the edge with her thumb and remembered Owen's laugh when he forgot to be careful. Remembered how he had taught her to ride a bike by running behind her until he couldn't keep up anymore. You don't let anyone need you, she had said. The truth settled in her chest with an ache that wasn't new, but clearer now. She had pushed him away to protect him. He had stepped back to protect her. And in between, something real had been left alone in the dark. Sable sat on the bed and closed her eyes. For years, choice had been an illusion. Every decision shaped by fear, of escalation, of disbelief, of consequence. Tonight felt different. The fear was still there, but so was agency. She picked up her phone. Opened a blank message. Typed. Deleted. Typed again. I'm sorry. Too small. You didn't deserve what I said. Too narrow. She set the phone down, heart pounding. Words felt insufficient. This wasn't about winning an argument. It was about telling the truth without armor. She stood, grabbed her coat, and paused at the door. Security protocol flickered in her mind. Avira's caution. Headlines. Optics. Then she remembered something Owen had said at the park, admitting when the law isn't enough. Sable stepped outside. Across town, Owen sat alone in his apartment, suit jacket folded with obsessive precision over the back of a chair. The television was off. His phone lay face down on the table, as if it could accuse him if he let it. He poured a glass of water and didn't drink it. Recusal had been the correct move. He knew that. It had restored the appearance of neutrality, if not the feeling. The committee's call had been clinical, polite. The kind of process that told you your sacrifice had been received and filed. Still, the quiet pressed in. He replayed the moment at the door, the way Sable's eyes had searched his face, the way he'd chosen restraint when every instinct begged him to stay. I would choose you again. He had meant it. The knock came softly. Once. Owen froze. Another knock, hesitant, unmistakable. He crossed the room and opened the door. Sable stood there, coat buttoned wrong, hair loose, eyes steady in a way that surprised him. I know this is a bad idea, she said. If you want me to leave, I will. He didn't answer immediately. Then he stepped aside. She entered, hands clasped as if holding herself together by will alone. The apartment smelled like cedar and clean linen him. Familiar in a way that hurt. I shouldn't have said what I said, she began. I wasn't trying to punish you. I was trying to survive. Owen leaned against the counter, arms folded, not defensive, just contained. I know. I don't, she said. I don't think I knew until now. She took a breath. I've been measuring love by its cost for so long that I forgot to ask what it gives back. He watched her carefully. And what does it give back? She met his eyes. Ground. Safety. The courage to tell the truth. Silence stretched, charged, deliberate. I don't want you to rescue me, Sable continued. I want you to stand next to me. If that costs you something, I need it to be a choice, not a debt. Owen exhaled slowly. I stepped back because I thought that's what you needed. I needed you to trust me, she said. To let me decide whether I could hold the consequences with you. He nodded once. That's fair. She swallowed. Can you? He looked at her then, really looked. At the steadiness she had earned. At the fear she carried without letting it steer. Yes, he said. If you're asking me to choose, yes. Her shoulders eased, just a fraction. They stood there, not touching, the air between them warm with something fragile and alive. Sable reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the folded restraining order request. I'm filing it tomorrow, she said. Not because I'm afraid. Because I'm done pretending the past doesn't count. Owen's eyes softened. I'll be there. In the gallery. As your brother. And after? She asked quietly. He didn't rush the answer. After, he said, we see what grows when no one is hiding. She nodded. Okay. They moved toward each other at the same time, not an embrace, not a kiss. Just a shared breath in the same space. Presence without pressure. Outside, the city kept its distance. Inside, a choice had been made. When the moment comes, when silence asks for courage, what do you choose? Sit with that question. If you're still here, it's because you know how rare it is to choose vulnerability on purpose. Stay with this story. Some choices deserve witnesses. The courthouse looked different in the morning. Not kinder. Not softer. Just honest. Sunlight streamed through the high windows, catching dust in the air like quiet witnesses. People filled the benches again. Press, observers, strangers hungry for narrative. But Sable no longer felt like a story being told about her. She felt present. She stood beside Avira, hands steady, shoulders relaxed. The restraining order papers were filed. The new case number read aloud. The process moved forward without spectacle. 2 rows back in the gallery, not the bench, sat Owen Valine. No robe. No gavel. No authority except the kind that came from being exactly where he belonged. When Sable glanced back and met his eyes, he didn't nod. He didn't signal. He simply held her gaze, open, unguarded. I'm here. The judge assigned to the case called for order. And for the first time, Sable spoke without fear of being interrupted. Her voice didn't shake. She told the truth, not in sweeping declarations, but in clear, grounded sentences. She named patterns. She named injuries. She named the cost of silence. She didn't embellish. She didn't apologize. When Rydian was brought in, cuffed and stripped of polish, she didn't look at him. She didn't need to. The law did its work, not perfectly, not magically, but adequately. Charges upheld. Protection granted. Consequences attached. As the gavel fell, something echoed, not the violence of Act 2, but its mirror image. The same sound. A different meaning. Closure doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives quietly, like breath returning after a long submersion. Outside the courthouse, the press surged. Questions flew. Opinions demanded shape. Sable stopped once. Just once. I didn't win, she said calmly. I reclaimed myself. She walked away before anyone could follow up. Owen waited at the edge of the steps, hands in his pockets, posture relaxed in a way she had never seen before. When she reached him, neither of them spoke immediately. You okay? He asked. She smiled, a real one. I am. They walked together, not hurried, not hiding. Weeks passed. The safe house gave way to a small apartment with tall windows and too much light. Sable chose it herself. Painted one wall a deep green. Bought a plant she had no idea how to care for. Owen visited often, but never assumed. They rebuilt something new from familiar pieces. Dinners that stretched into conversation, shared silence that didn't feel heavy, laughter that surprised them both. One evening, rain tapping gently against the windows, Sable stood at the counter chopping vegetables while Owen dried dishes beside her. This feels normal, she said. Owen smiled. Careful. You might get used to it. She glanced at him. I already have. The words settled between them, unrushed, unafraid. Later, they sat on the couch, shoulders touching. Not because they had to. Because they chose to. You know, Sable said, for a long time I thought love meant being endured. Owen turned toward her. And now? Now I think it means being met. He didn't answer with words. He reached for her hand, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. The touch was gentle. Intentional. Nothing claimed. Nothing rushed. Unexpected love doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself in moments that feel earned. Sable rested her head against his shoulder, heart steady. For the first time, closeness didn't feel like danger. It felt like home. Months later, Sable stood in a community room, addressing a small group, women, advocates, quiet listeners. No cameras. No spectacle. She spoke about choice. About naming harm. About rebuilding on your own terms. Owen sat in the back, anonymous, proud. When it ended, she found him by the door. "You didn't have to come," she said. "I wanted to," he replied. They walked out together into an evening washed clean by rain. At the crosswalk, she stopped. "Hey," she said. He turned. "This, whatever it is we're building, I want it slow. Honest. Equal." He nodded. "That's the only kind I want." She smiled, relief softening her features. The light changed. They crossed. That night, Sable stood by her window, city lights blinking like distant stars. She touched the faint scar on her wrist, not with shame, but recognition. She had survived. She had chosen. And she had allowed herself something she once thought was impossible, not rescue, not redemption, but love at last. Love that arrived quietly. Love that stayed. If you've walked this journey with Sable, if you felt her fear, her courage, her choice, ask yourself, what would healing look like if you believed you deserved it too? Stories like this don't end when the screen fades. They live on in the people who carry them forward. If you stayed until now, it's because something here mattered to you. Stay connected. Some truths are worth walking with, long after the last word.
Thank you for staying with this story to the very end. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you'll not miss out on the next video.